Hello again. In this video, I will show you two very useful functions when you use EvoMass, which is the editing boundary and the cutting boundary. And these two functions will allow you to set a customized boundary when when you use EvoMass to generate building meshing. And these two functions also uh, very similarly as the same in both the subtracted and the additive algorithm. So in this video, I will only use the additive algorithm to demonstrate how you can use these two functions when you generate your building meshing. So I will start with the cutting boundary function. So for this function, um, for example, I am already using the additive generative algorithm to generate a building meshing, and we will turn the perspective from the top. If I want to make a more customized boundary for this building meshing, for example, such as a triangle or other more complex shape of the footprint of the building, you can define a boundary to allow the algorithm to only generate the building meshing within the boundary. So here I will show you a simple example. Firstly, you need to draw the boundary, and the boundary can be outside the boundary you are already set in the algorithm. All right, and the next step is to select this cutting boundary. And when you select it, you need to press this button, and the algorithm will cut all the grid unit outside and uh, coincide with the boundary. So it means that only the grid unit inside the boundary will be preserved. Uh, and if you want to redefine your boundary, you just need to, for example, you change this corner. You need to uh, clear the previous cutting boundary, and then to set this new one again and click the set parameter. And all right, this is about the cutting boundary. And the one thing is that in the current version of the EvoMass, you can only select one cutting boundary. It means that you cannot set, for example, here is a outer boundary, and then you set another internal boundary that you can create. You want to create a courtyard or something. This is not allowed in the current version. And the other scenario is that in some cases you may want to make a corridor or a path in the middle of the building. So in that case, it is also not allowed because if you draw the boundary like this one, like a corridor, uh, only the building meshing inside this boundary will be generated. It means that these two parts will be disappear in the generated building meshing. So if you want to uh, uh, delete or clear the cutting boundary, you need to only click this clear cutting boundary button and then to set the parameter again. And the whole building will be resumed to its default setting. All right, we will go to the next function is the adding boundary. The adding boundary is the purpose of the adding boundary is that in some cases, for example, you want to generate uh, a, a, a high-rise tower and attach or intersect with a podium. So using this function, you can set a stable tower, high-rise tower, or stable podium in your design. So and when you set this adding boundary, it will generate the whole building as a whole. It means that the stable part of the design will also have the roof surface and the facade surface. So I will show you how to create adding boundary. A little bit different from the cutting boundary is that the cutting boundary is more of a 2D perspective. It means that you cannot change the height of the cutting boundary. So when you set the cutting boundary, the whole building will be exclude outside the boundary, but the but inside the boundary, the you cannot change. You cannot define different height for the algorithm to generate the building massing. But for the adding boundary, it can generate another building block higher than the original one. So for example, here I will show you how to use this adding boundary. Use adding boundary is different from the cutting boundary. The cutting boundary, you will select a curve, but when you use the adding boundary, you will select a breadth. So here we will first generate a breadth like this. All right, and we select this and click the set parameter. And then he will generate, for example, this like a high-rise tower. And the other function is that you don't need to make this breadth attached with the ground. So it means that you can raise this breadth a little bit and then to click and set the breadth again. And you can see the whole the adding boundary will be flow in the air. It means that you can create like an entrance space for the building with like a steel here. And other function of the adding boundary is that you don't need to use a box, and you can also set a more complex footprint for this part of the building massing. So we delete this one first and click the adding boundary. So likewise, we will draw a more customized shape of the building for the adding boundary. And we need to extrude this part. So you can see this shape is a little bit more complex than the previous one. And sorry. All right, you can see they will generate a more complex shape of the adding boundary. Similarly, the adding boundary will only generate all the grid unit inside the boundary you divide. So it cannot neatly allege with the shape you divide, but will create the building mason like this stagnate shape here. And similarly, you can also raise this meshing to create a steel in the building you generated. And the other point of using the adding boundary is that you can only use extrude to create the breadth. You define the boundary. It means that you cannot define a shape with different types with different height in the different area. Even you input this complex shape, they will only generate the shape like this. So maybe I will make a more complex this adding boundary and cutting boundary function in the future version, but in the current version, you can only generate this relatively simple cutting boundary and the adding boundary. Okay, that's it. Thank you for watching this video.